on the call, thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much for joining the intergenerational dialogue on the tobacco control story of Kenya. This is going to be a very interesting 1 hour or so of your time, where we'll be talking about a roundtable to explore the history of tobacco control in Kenya, what foundations exist, what are the young people's take on the same, and it will be an opportunity to give the forerunners of the tobacco control to share the history and successes and challenges that they faced in their fight on tobacco. In this webinar, we'll also be talking to the current generation of tobacco control actors. We'll talk about their engagement and how they're also bringing about the younger generation who are curious, enthusiastic, and we are want to learn from their elders and to learn the experiences from them. But before we go into the details, my name is Ogweno Stephen. I am a global health practitioner and always very passionate about advocacy and control around non-communicable diseases. And I'll be taking you through this quick session that will be very insightful, but also very needed at this time when tobacco, especially in Kenya, is beginning to see a comeback into the society. But without further ado, let's give some very simple house rules. And the first rule of this is be very attentive and take a lot of notes, and of course, enjoy the conversations. That is the first and the most important rule. And then the second rule is if you're not talking, please be on mute so that we are able to hear the ones who are talking directly. But if you're talking, have your camera on and also have your audio on so that we can be able to listen to you. We can also be sharing the conversation as it goes on various social media platforms to ensure that we're also able to see you on the social media platforms, especially on Twitter as well. But without further ado, let's jump into the introductions. Who are we speaking to today? Who are these experts in the control, in the tobacco control area? So the first guest is Raquel Kitonyo. Raquel is currently the Africa Regional Manager of Maccabee Center for Law and Cancer. Raquel is also a senior tobacco advisor working on the Tobacco Control Data Initiative program at Development Gateway. She has about 15 years of experience working in the tobacco prevention space in Kenya and across Africa. From 2010 to 2013, she mentored future leaders through the Africa Tobacco Control Consortium, where she also coordinated with WHO Regional Office for Africa to lead training sessions on tobacco control capacity building for government lawyers across the continent. And since 2014, she has helped train more than 150 government lawyers and policymakers in low and middle-income countries through Maccabee Center for International Legal Training Program. And so, Raquel, thank you very much. Welcome on board. You'll have your opportunity to present, but that is our first guest or panelist on the board. And then next we have Mr. Joel Gitali, who is a very popular name in this area. Mr. Joel Gitali is an educationist, a psychological counselor, and management consultant. He is also the chairperson of the Kenya Tobacco Control Alliance, KETCA, an umbrella organization for civil society organizations advancing the fight against ills caused by farming, production, manufacturing, and consumption of tobacco in Kenya. He joined KETCA in 2008 and was appointed the chairperson in 2013. And in 2022, he is a laureate of the World Health Organization World No Tobacco Day Award. That is another powerful panelist that we have on board. And then next we have Samuel Ochieng. Samuel Ochieng. So Samuel Ochieng is the Chief Executive Officer of the Consumer Information Network in Kenya. He is also a member of the Network for Accountability of Tobacco Transnationals. He is a former president of the Consumers International and a former board member of the Cochrane Collaborations. Samuel, a statistician, has been actively involved in tobacco control for over 20 years. Samuel's focus is on tobacco control industry interference and has been undertaking writing the Kenya Tobacco Industry Interference Index report since 2019. Welcome on board, Mr. Samuel, and of course, we'll give you an opportunity to speak shortly. Next, we have Elvina Majiwa. Elvina Majiwa is a tobacco control and health promotion advocate based in Nairobi, Kenya. She is also a trained peer counselor with an interest in promoting positive mental health and sobriety, tobacco control, and harmful use of alcohol. Her professional background is in marketing and communication, and she works in the energy sector. She is currently a master's student pursuing international relations. Elvina has been a youth advocate for more than 4 years now, and we'll be hearing more about her experiences in the tobacco space shortly. And then finally, we have Mr. David Odhiambo. So David Odhiambo is the current chairperson of Den of Hope Youth Group, a community-based organization located in Nairobi, Kenya. Through Den of Hope, he has been steadfast for the past 10 years in creating awareness and sensitization among the youth and community in general on the dangers of tobacco and its related products, especially with the urban informal settlements. He has been part of the tobacco control civil society movement, which has been very vocal in lobbying and advancing the implementation of anti-tobacco control laws in Kenya. Clearly, as you can see, we have quite the guests on board who will be delving deep very shortly on issues of tobacco control and the interference that is there, but also the opportunities that lie for learning and also for sharing knowledge across board. And without further ado, I'd like to move into the first segment of this conversation. And during this first segment, we are going to look at the overview of tobacco control in Kenya. And here I'll be inviting Mr. Samuel Ochieng, who will be, as you've heard, has a very comprehensive profile in this area, to give us a brief overview of the tobacco control in Kenya in just 5 minutes. So, Mr. Samuel, welcome on board, and your 5 minutes begins now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, moderator, and thank you for the nice introduction. I want to start by also thanking ATCA and all the organizers for giving us this opportunity to be able to share this kind of history, the journey that we've come a long way with, because at times it's not easy to publish or get this opportunity to be able to pass this to the next generation. So thank you very much. As I start, the whole issue about tobacco control in Kenya started a while ago. It started quite some time back. Actually, it started before the FCTC was even adopted and started. So the first thing that we had, of course, is the Tobacco Control Act 2007. And to develop this act, it took more than 13 years to develop this act. And that was, it means that it was back and forth in Parliament. So by the time Parliament assented to it, or government assented to it, it was 2007. So you can imagine that with the FCTC coming into force in 2005, then it means that we already had a very long history of this. And the reason why it took so long to get it enacted is that one, the industry interference as normal. It was a lot of intimidation, a lot of interference. Then finally, we got it in 2007. If you recall, you find that it also took a very long time to have the FCTC accepted and adopted. And I being there during that time, because before the FCTC was agreed in Geneva, there was a lot of action. I do remember that we did have even movements such as the People's Health Movement. We had parallel People's Health Assemblies. And that time I was also involved with Consumers International. I was involved with the Cochrane Collaboration. And it took a lot of lobbying, actually more than 10 years to have the FCTC adopted. And of course, the first COP was in Geneva. And during that time, of course, even when we got to the COP, the second COP in Thailand, the third COP, which then was in South Africa, there was still a lot of work to be done, to accept the guidelines and to have them adopted. That was a real process. And during that time, you'll find that actually the government delegation was very, very lean. I remember, like in Bangkok, if you talk about Kenya, we had maybe 2 or 3 people attending the COP from the government delegation. This one has since increased a lot, and now you find that the government delegation is quite huge, and this means that there's a lot of interest also in terms of this subject. So the people who were there initially, like Dr. Maina, Ogwell, Dorcas, I think we had a lot of work to do. Then I would want to say that some of the key milestones, when you look at Kenya, the journey for Kenya, some of the key milestones are, of course, first of all, having had that law, having had a regulation, which we also fought so hard, we had to move to court. We had to go to court when BAT petitioned the Tobacco Control Regulations 2014, and it took quite a long time again before these ones were adopted. So those are key milestones. I must say also that Kenya has made a significant contribution in terms of the tobacco control landscape globally, and even within WHO, within FCTC. We have quite a number of experts who have come from Kenya, who have been nurtured here at home and who are now holding positions. We are very glad to have Dorcas also to have been a vice chair of the COP and a vice president of the COP. I think those are real milestones in terms of us doing what we can do here, but also taking it out to the world. The difficult side of it, which I think we must say, as the moderator said, we have to have the lows and the ups. The lows part of it has been the struggle with the tobacco industry. When we got the government receiving a donation from BAT during COVID, I think that was at our lowest. Recently, you also heard about our president being like the marketing manager for the tobacco industry, talking about exporting tobacco abroad. Those are really low moments for us. So the industry, the interference, and of course, having to go to court and to drag this issue of the tobacco control regulations, that was a really low moment for us. The high moments, as I've said, when we got to win this case in court, the one at the Supreme Court, having gone all the way from High Court to the Supreme Court, I think that was a big plus for us. And I must say that we've also had some few good things, but we still have a big challenge, more so now with the young people, and when we are moving on to the novel products, the lift and all that, the nicotine pouches. That one is a difficult fight ahead. And I know that it's already started. We had a meeting at KEBS and it's becoming much more nastier. So we need to continue fighting on that. The issues about the shisha ban, and just to be able to hold that, these are things that we need to work around. So we still have quite a lot to do. We've come a long way. We've been able to have some successes. I must say that we must resist taking this country to the dark days when there was the advertising or the taps were not there, and now we've started with the promotion, the CSR, the donations and all that. We must ensure that we don't go back to those old days. I remember that there was a time that we had a very serious interference with the industry when we were actually in South Korea, Seoul, for a COP, and then the industry writes to government and asked that the Kenyan positions be put aside. That was really another low moment. So I will leave it there for now because I know that we're just starting, and I'll be at your service to answer.
All right. Thank you very much. I love how you've taken us through a very short overview, but also very detailed, but still at the same time been able to keep up with the time. That has been something that I've really loved, and I think you set example for the next moderators as well, to be very precise, but also still keep time. So next, we are going to hear it from Mr. Raquel Kitonyo. As you've heard her profile, she's done quite a bit in this space. And so, Miss Raquel Kitonyo, the question here is on the appraisal of tobacco control years back and the tobacco control movement in Kenya today. What can you comment, to that journey, how it has been from the years back till the movement to date? And again, you have 5 minutes to go, and I'll give you the stage to give us that history. We'd like to hear a bit more on the journey. Thank you. You're welcome.
So I think, hi, thanks, Steve, and I'm happy to share from the last 18 years of tobacco control. I think one of the biggest changes has been in the social acceptability of smoking. And so in 2004, when I got into tobacco control, and when I compare to now, I think smoking has become less socially acceptable. And so it's hard to actively see smokers in public in Kenya. And so for the young generation that is coming, when you don't see them anymore, it's hard to remember when there were smokers everywhere. So now, unless you go like to a designated smoking area, you very rarely smell smoke in the air in Kenya, and it's no longer acceptable to smoke in public. And if you do, someone is likely to tell you that that's not allowed. And so I think 25 years of advocacy on our part has made that change in the society. I think the other thing I'll pick up on is the new and increased actors in the space. And so in 2004, when I entered, you had people like Kenya Medical Association who are really active. So I think a lot of the advocacy was led from a health perspective. And then people like myself entered who are lawyers. Along the way, we added people like Gitali, so the educationists came in. And so when I look over 20 years of advocacy, we've got a really vibrant tobacco control movement. So I can say that it has really grown and expanded. Now, some of this, of course, is due to increased funding for tobacco control in Kenya. And so when I got into tobacco control in 2004, there wasn't really any funding. So there was a little funding from WHO, but we were basically a broke movement. Along the way, in around 2007, we got our first grant from CTFK. So that's when the first CTFK funding came into Kenya. And following that, they were funding both civil society and the Tobacco Control Board. And then finally, the entrance of the Gates Foundation. And so with increased money, we've been able to increase the depth of activities in Kenya. And so activities ranging from just public education and awareness, now to research, and then to really focus advocacy. So I think we've also seen an increase in funding. One of the other things that has changed is that I think the advocacy is becoming more complex. And so in 2004, when I got in, it was at that time advocacy for ratification of the FCTC, and then after that for adoption of legislation. However, now I think the issues are becoming more complex. And so now we are talking about tobacco tax advocacy, and you've got novel tobacco products that need to be addressed. And so I think the skill set that the tobacco control advocate needs today is a bit more complex. And so there's need for more technical knowledge, need for more research and more evidence to underpin advocacy. I remember when we were in Parliament lobbying for the Tobacco Control Act in 2006, and a member of Parliament who stood up and said, "Mr. Speaker, sir, I have got some serious evidence here that tobacco use is dangerous." And then can you imagine what the evidence was that he held up? It was a smoker's body. That was the kind of evidence we were using then. I doubt now if you went lobbying for tobacco taxes that you could just use the smoker's body. And so I think we have improved in how we collect the data and how we package it, and the use of evidence to back the advocacy that we are doing. I think the other thing that I would say is that there's also lots more evidence. And so increasingly in the last 3 or 4 years, we have seen a variety of indexes. And so when, for example, you talk about the Tobacco Industry Interference Index, in which Kenya has participated for 3 years, you've got the Tobacconomics Scorecard that ranks tobacco taxes. Kenya has been featured and they have data going back 6 years. So there's lots more information available from which advocates can build their messaging. Finally, the last thing that I think has changed a lot over the last 15 years are the tobacco industry tactics. And so in 2004, BAT used to come out as BAT. And so I remember sitting in meetings at the Ministry of Health where BAT would come and demand that they're a stakeholder and they have to be listened to. And that was before we got the regulations in 2014 that had provisions on Article 5.3. And so every time we had stakeholder meetings, BAT had to be invited and we had to listen to them. Following the adoption of the 2014 regulations and increasing advocacy and awareness on Article 5.3, BAT can no longer come as itself. And so we are starting to see less of direct lobbying and use of more front groups. And so we've got a lot of front groups agitating for things like harm reduction. Even on tobacco taxation, you find BAT hiding behind other entities to oppose taxes. So you'll see people like KEPSA, you'll see the alcohol and sugar industries. And so when you go to a parliamentary hearing, it's really hard to see BAT as BAT. And so there's a lot more front groups. And what this means for us as advocates is that we have to be a bit more nimble about knowing who we are speaking to. And so when you go to Parliament and there's lobbying against the Excise Act, you'll not see BAT, you'll see Coca-Cola. But when you analyze the written submissions, all of them are saying the same thing. And so increased use of front groups. I think also the increased use of litigation and the threats of litigation. So as Sam mentioned, 3 court cases since 2004 to date, all the way up to the Supreme Court. And then lastly, I think movement from the ordinary constitutional challenge to hearing arguments around trade and investment and economic arguments. And so again, the skill set that the advocate needs to have ready to deal with the tobacco industry right now has changed. That's what I would say for now, Steve.
All right, thank you very much. I'm really loving these panel sessions and how we are sticking to time and how we are, as various speakers come on board, they ensure that the time is kept, but they also give us very good stories and very good histories that are very important for this conversation. Remember, one of the objectives of this conversation today is to share experiences from the experts, from those who've gone before us, so that we, the young people, can actually pick up learning points, can actually pick up points of advocacy, can actually pick up areas of integration and collaboration. And so as these experts in the industry continue to share the experiences, the expectation is that all of us as the young people on the call are also picking up different points on advocacy, different points on the journey, how it started, how it's going, so that as we take up the mantle from them, that we're able to communicate and that we're able to highlight these conversations and bring them to the forefront, so that, as the first speaker said, we don't go back into the dark days. Now, I'd like to welcome Mr. Joel Gitali. Joel Gitali, as you had his profile, is very vast in the conversations on tobacco and tobacco control. And Joel Gitali will be giving us some highlights on the loopholes and challenges plaguing the tobacco control in Kenya. What are some of the loopholes that you've seen and that exist? And what are some of the challenges that continue to plague tobacco control in Kenya? Mr. Joel, the stage is yours. And again, you have 5 minutes to give us some quick highlights that we can learn from. Take it away.
Thank you. Now, I'm a student of Rachel, Sam, and Dorcas, among others. So I'm sure they taught me well. Now, we've had a lot of challenges, a lot of loopholes when it comes to tobacco control in Kenya. And the first one is that one of inadequate resources compared to the tobacco industry. For a long time, we've not had enough of the resources that we require so as to do what we are supposed to do. For example, the industries everywhere in the country at the county level, now that we have got those 2 levels of governance, the county and the national, so you find the tobacco industry going everywhere. But now those of us who are in tobacco control are unable to do the same because of lack of resources or inadequate resources that we have. And as we know, most of our partners, donor agencies, always imagine that Nairobi is Kenya. So once the give anything, they are giving as they think about Nairobi, not Kenya. So that has been a real problem. Even when you want to meet these legislators and talk to them about tobacco control, the members of parliament, the members of the county assemblies at the county level, they need allowances, which are not forthcoming because we do not have the resources. So we end up not doing proper lobbying. We don't participate in whatever is happening at all these levels because we do not have the capacity to do so. Then we also have tobacco industry interference, really having mutated, as my colleagues have said. There is a lot that the industry is doing when it comes to policy development, policy implementation, and even enforcement. There is a lot that has been documented. So you find it very difficult making headway because maybe those that are supposed to be doing this work, the law enforcers, have been compromised. You find some of the places where violations are taking place are even owned by some people who are related to the industry. And that comes to what we can term as conflict of interest as another problem that we have, where you find those that are supposed to develop policy, those that are supposed to implement policy, and those that are supposed to enforce are the same fellows that are violating tobacco control laws, tobacco control policies in the country. So it becomes very hard for those of us who are involved in this to do anything. You remember during the lockdown when we had COVID really ravaging, there was this problem of listing tobacco as an essential product in Kenya, whereby the industry could supply the product everywhere, but then tobacco control advocates could not even monitor because we were not moving freely. This is a problem that we have had in our country. We also have these emerging products as another problem, whereby the industry is arguing that these products are not sufficiently covered by the law, that the law did not have these things, rather those who are coming up with the policies that we have didn't have the emerging products in their minds. And therefore, there is that fight that where do we place these products? And that is a loophole that is being really used. As we are talking now, the market is flooded. We have got novel products, things to do with the oral nicotine pouches, they're everywhere. We have got e-cigarettes, and yet the industry keeps on talking about these products not having been covered sufficiently by the law, much as we still maintain that they must be regulated by Tobacco Control Act, Tobacco Control Regulations, and other policies. At times you find tobacco control players reading from different scripts. There are cases where we have seen this, like when we were in court with the industry over tobacco control regulations. We were somehow not really agreeing on which way to take, and this one becomes a problem and something that is really taken advantage of by the tobacco industry. So once this happens, because even now as we are talking, we have got some people who believe in what those that are advocating for tobacco harm reduction products are saying, those that they think, those that believe that these are safer alternatives are actually saying, yes, that is the way to go. And some of us are saying no. So you find there is some problem there. Unless it is tackled well, it can really bring problems. Then there are times when you find our partners, the donor agencies, trying to impose on us what we feel is not a priority. Sometimes telling us what to do and even how to do it, and yet we feel that our priority is something else. But then because whoever pays the piper dictates the dance, you find that things happen like that, and then we have to come in and say, okay, we are going to do that, even where we are not really seriously thinking that that is the way to go. So that is a loophole that has been there. Another one is about networking. Networking has become a really issue because when we began tobacco control in Kenya, there was a time even when organizations came together and formed the Kenya Tobacco Control Alliance, and they could get some little funds to do this and that. But then time came when this ceased, and even the tobacco control network in Kenya is no longer really seen as a network. But then the Kenya Tobacco Control Alliance itself is just treated like any other organization and given just some money by our partners for particular projects and nothing like networking or that kind of thing. So that one has also become a bit of a problem, whereby you also find different donors financing different groups in Kenya, and then giving them maybe things that we look at as a duplication of roles. So you find it interfering with the networking a bit, and that is another loophole which the industry can really utilize and which can bring us down. We have had the TI, as Rachel has rightly said, changing tactics and employing tactics that are very difficult to deal with, much as we try. And even ATCA has seen this in Africa and has helped us in Kenya, where you'll find now the industry is really going to institutions of high learning, universities, and working with them, introducing contests like Battle of Minds. And as we are talking, we have had to stop negotiations between the industry and the universities of Nairobi and the Kenyatta University, where they were entering some agreements on how to work together. So you see, this is happening. They have already worked with one of the universities. I think this must have been the Aga Khan University. And we are trying to fight so that this doesn't continue. That is one of the techniques that they are now using. They are now using experts, as Richard said. You find people even from universities saying that they are researchers, and that they have researched and found that these tobacco control harm reduction fellows, theories, and talks about alternative or rather safer alternatives is actually true, which is not. So they really influence the society in those lines. We have had other very serious institutions like KEBS, the Pharmacy and the Poisons Board being also misused. We have had litigation, as we have had. So there are these things that are happening, but then the greater part of it, we are unable sometimes to match the industry. Like when it comes to litigation, we can't even join ourselves to the government. We can't take the industry to court because of lack of resources and what have you, among other things that we might discuss as we continue.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. I love it. Every time I hear you, Joel, I just love that I get to learn new things and new tactics that are being used. Again, thank you very much for keeping up with time. And again, for the users, for the listeners who are on the call, remember, you can already begin to ask your questions. You can already begin to ask your questions via the Q&A. The likes of Joel and all other panel speakers are here and waiting to answer those questions. So remember to, if you have already questions, kindly start putting them on the chat. And then, as you can see, we are going well. We are going well, and a lot of tips are being shared, and a lot of industry tactics are being shared. Also to remember that again, we are very much on time, and we have 1 hour to go. This being a 1 hour 30-minute session, and so we are very, very much on time. And this is also to just let you know that it's going well. Ask your questions, and we'll be getting back to those in a few. But next, I'd like to hear it from the new blood, or the advocates that are now just coming up. We've heard from Mr. Samuel, who is an expert, Mr. Raquel, an expert, Mr. Joel, an expert, and in our youth language, we'll call them the OGs. We've heard from the OGs. Now it's time to hear from the young blood, who is the young people who are, getting into this field. And so Alvina Majiwa will be our next speaker. Of course, we'll have 8 minutes just like the others. And so you represent a generation of young tobacco control advocates who bring to the table fresh ideas that are required, to move this needle forward. And we see that information and communication technology skills are continuously becoming more important in these days of tobacco control in Kenya. The tobacco industry has not only inducted Kenya with products, it is also actively promoting its harmful products and activities online, which is, it's a new tactic that they have adopted with the changing times. And so talk to us about what has your experience been utilizing your ICT and communication skills to foster tobacco control. And your 8 minutes start now. Alvina, take it away.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much, Stephen. When you began, you said that young people were enthusiastic, we're curious, and true to it, we are very curious, we're enthusiastic, we are here to learn and to engage, and we are very open to that. So I'd like to start by thanking the Africa Tobacco Control Alliance for, first of all, having this particular forum, and more so for welcoming us, the young people, into this important conversation. So a background to my journey in tobacco control. It's been actually wonderful because I've met friends along the journey, friends who are enthusiastic, who are passionate about tobacco control and health promotion, specifically in the mental health space, promoting that. I've also met excellent mentors, some of which are in this panel. Joel Gitali is one of them. From Ketka, I've met Elif Dagli from Turkey when we were at Youth Forum for Tobacco Control earlier this year, and also Bintu Kamara, and among very many mentors who are always willing to teach us and to work with us in the tobacco control forums. So we have been able to accomplish a lot. We have been able to visit children's homes, visit high schools, and just sensitize them about the negative effects that tobacco has. So as we visit them, we show them the tobacco body, and the results that we get after, the feedback we get is that it's very, very impactful. Now, to answer the question on ICT skills, now more than ever, there's so many people who are using the internet. It's estimated to be over 3 billion people. So you can imagine the reach that you can get just on the internet. So as young people, we've been able to use digital advocacy. There's a speaker, Rachel, she earlier mentioned that more than ever, the skills keep evolving because the tobacco industry also is evolving in their tactics. So we as advocates also need to keep upping our game in having particular skills. So digital advocacy is a skill that we really need to harness and continue building. So we have been part of digital campaigns on committing to quit, or the recent one was about the environmental effects, the negative environmental effects that tobacco has. And we do posters, videos, infographics. And this is because one video is likely to reach very many people online as opposed to having it, say, screened in a location. Or for example, a poster. A poster is likely to have very many eyes on it on the internet as opposed to having it stuck somewhere. So digital advocacy has several benefits. One of them also could be that we are able to speak directly to decision makers. We are also able to name and shame those tactics that are used, because the tobacco industry uses sly tactics to advertise to young people. You'd find that they were pushing for an initiative called Battle for the Minds. And we used the internet to sign petitions because this competition, it's very ironic that they claim that they want the best minds, yet their product kills the mind. It really dulls the mind and it has negative effects. So apart from signing petitions online, we've been able to educate people. So in Kenya, Facebook is used a lot. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. But depending on, for example, the listener, depending on the country you come from, doing research on which platform is very popular would help your initiatives and will bring success to them. So lastly, I'll mention about the cost implication of using digital advocacy. So for example, right now we are attending a webinar. It's affordable, it's not very expensive. All you need maybe is the internet bundles, and you can reach very many people. So I definitely encourage people to use digital advocacy, be it social media, be it blogs, writing blogs and sharing them, be it social media, all for the well-being of the citizens. So thank you very much, Stephen. Back to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Again, excellent on timekeeping, but also excellent on the skills. You know, digital skills is becoming the future, and if we are to tackle the tobacco industry head-on, we cannot forget advocacy on the digital front. So thank you very much for highlighting that bit. Now we'll be moving into the last of these long-form introductory remarks, and this will be done by Mr. David Odhiambo. As you know, David Odhiambo is you lead a youth group. You know, he leads a youth group that has tobacco control as one of its core interventions. We can describe you also as a youth with quite some extensive experience in tobacco control. Now, the question is, how can young people create impact with regards to tobacco control in Kenya? What can young people do? How can we come together and create this impact? Mr. David, take it away, and your 5 minutes begins now. You are very much on mute. If you could kindly unmute. Thank you.
You can see me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you clearly. Take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm honored this afternoon to join this informative and enlightening virtual session. So in regards to what young people can do to create meaningful impact in regards to tobacco control within their community is that, first of all, I think young people can leverage on their skills, talents, and abilities in arts and music, so as to create awareness on the dangers and the devastating effects of tobacco, because you'll find that in the community where we're working back here at home in Kenya, the youth generally have enormous potential when it comes to composing music, doing artistic creativity such as murals, graffiti. So they can also use these techniques to create awareness. Another thing, you'll realize that most of these tobacco products have infiltrated learning institutions, be it universities, secondary schools, and also tertiary institutions. So it's paramount for young people to initiate and manage tobacco control products within learning institutions, so that also within the institutions we can have this conversation. Because we've realized even in our interventions as an organization that tobacco products and even the novel and emerging tobacco products are finding their way into schools. So it's important as well to have tobacco control clubs. Again, since young people are more technologically friendly, and young technology is one of the areas whereby to use tobacco products, it will be important for also young people to use the social media so as to create tobacco control messages as a way of reaching out to the wider public. Again, also young people can also utilize their spaces or their platforms to create awareness on tobacco. For example, young people can use youth comfort zones. They can also use youth-friendly facilities. They can also use their own organization, social development groups, so as to create awareness on tobacco. Another area is that young people can also take part in the budget making process with a view of making the government to allocate more resources towards tobacco control in Kenya, because you realize that in Kenya currently we have the tobacco control, the tobacco control fund, which is a significant stride which we've made as tobacco control advocates. But when it comes to the operationalization of the tobacco control fund, you'll find that the government has not allocated resources towards the enactment of this important fund. So young people can also take part in budget advocacy to ensure that the government allocates resources towards tobacco control. Again, being that young people command a huge social capital within Kenya, and 75% of the population of Kenya, people can initiate dialogues within the community using their youth comfort zones so as to create awareness on tobacco. And also, young people can also take part in awareness and sensitization through the youth who've reformed, because we've realized that there are youths who've reformed, who've quit the habit of smoking, and they can be used as role models to reach out to their fellow young people in order to create awareness on tobacco. So those are my presentations as far as the involvement of young people. And maybe finally, I'll also emphasize that also youth serving organizations, other youth serving organizations can also mainstream tobacco control as part of their program, so that we have a lot of youth organizations, both national and also at the local level, joining in this fight. Because just like speakers have said, the fight not for the faint-hearted. So we need also advocates, especially young people who have the passion, who have the drive of taking this agenda forward in the wake of tobacco industry interference. Because even at the community level, at institutions, we witness that there's blatant violation of the Tobacco Control Act, and a lot needs to be done in terms of informing and educating the masses on the devastating effect, and also to keep on reminding the law enforcement agents to implement the law according to the letter and spirit. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much again, Mr. David, for that contribution and for really, getting us into the next segment. So again, the conversations here are really to act as a learning point for all of us, the youth advocates on the call, to learn about these strategies and how we can pick the mantle moving forward. And in order to do that in an efficient way, we have questions, and I see questions are already coming through in the question and answer segment. And as you can see, that is the next section of this conversation. So we'll be taking a few questions, questions and answers to just hear it also from the attendants. And the first question we'll be taking will be a question from Blessing. Blessing, kindly, if you could ask a question and who you are addressing it to, and then we could begin to have answers on the same. So Blessing.
Okay, my question is, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I just can't see you.
Okay,
it's a bit noisy on your background.
I'm in school, so you don't experience a bit noisy. Okay, my question is, what is the most prominent way of dealing with the tobacco problem and how we as the youth can help in it.
So what is the most prominent tobacco control problem in Kenya, and how can we, as young people, help in that addressing that problem? So
Yes.
all right. Thank you very much for your question. I think I'll direct this to Joel to take it up, and then I'll continue to point these questions to various hosts on the call. But Joel, take this first one up. What do you see as the most prominent issue in tobacco control today in Kenya, and how can the young people plug into that fight? Joel. Okay, Mr. Joel, if you're speaking, you're very much on mute. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Now turn your camera on. Great.
Yeah, I was saying I'll try and my colleagues would help. We know that the challenges, as we have talked about currently, are many. But now what is really troubling us among the youth are these novel products, things that they are really using, and especially among college students, they had really given into shisha, which is still rampant in some areas, but then they are now really going into oral nicotine pouches and e-cigarettes. So these things are being taken up mainly by the youth, and especially those in school, because of their access to internet. And those who are dealing in these products are really using the internet to market the products and even to deliver them to whoever would want to be supplied with them. So the best thing for the youth to do, one, is to reach out to each other, the way we have been talking to some youth in colleges, and coming up with the peer counselors so that they can help others. And others are coming up with even tobacco control groups. Like now we have Students for Tobacco Control in Kenya, and we have been working in universities with these students. So you can reach out to others, talk to them, and you can put this content also on the social media because you have access. You normally communicate to each other through this. You can ensure that you put something on that platform, whichever platform you belong to, whether it's WhatsApp group, whether it's Facebook, Instagram. We can use these platforms to educate each other. And then it will also monitor those who are doing marketing and counter whatever they are doing with our own messages, with our comments and what have you. And when we come together, we also invite others. You can also organize some activities in these universities, like the Kenyatta University is planning to come up with some activities, things to do with the careers day, and then they bring in issues to do with tobacco control. They bring us on board. We can do this together, and we shall be helping somebody. So the youth have a big role to play by using whatever resources they have, with whatever technology that they have access to reach each other and assist. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Joel. That was beautifully answered. And so I see we have another question from Kevin Baraka. Kevin, if you can be able to unmute and also turn your camera on and then ask the question, that would be great. Kevin.
Hello, I'm Kevin Baraka. My question was, why is tobacco still being sold to teenagers in Kenya, when we all know that it is harmful and it causes death?
All right. So who do I throw this one to? This one I'll throw to Raquel or Rachel. Raquel, would you be willing to address that one for us?
So why is tobacco still being sold? two reasons. I think one is addiction to tobacco taxes. So the government does get revenue when cigarettes are manufactured and sold, and they are addicted to that revenue. So if you were to cut off that revenue stream immediately, I think there would be protests from that side. But then secondly, from a scientific point of view, you also have a large number of people who are addicted to nicotine. And if you suddenly remove the product from the market, you would create a black market. Now, the interesting thing about that argument is that if you think about countries talking about the smoke-free generation, they're talking about describing themselves as smoke-free when their prevalence drops below 5%. So if you're a country like Kenya, where national prevalence is at 9%, the national average, though at 17% for men, we should be able to start talking about a smoke-free generation, because it should be possible to move from 9 to 5%, at which point these countries like New Zealand and people like Singapore and Malaysia feel that when they have reduced the actual number of smokers, then they can ban the product. So it's because of the fear of creating a black market, and then two, the need to then get the political will, particularly from ministries of finance, to find another source of revenue. So because we also make the argument when we are raising tobacco taxes that the government is going to get revenue, we can't suddenly cut off that income stream. So what we know is that as we raise the taxes, the drop in smoking prevalence is slower than the rise in government income. And in the time that it will take as the number of smokers is diminishing, then we can come up with alternative sources of revenue. So those, I would say, are the two answers. But I do agree with you that we should not be prioritizing money, because if not, then we would sell cocaine. There's more money to be made in cocaine than there is to be made in cigarettes. So they are a bad product, and we should be working to change the focus from raising revenue to protecting lives and saving money from illness.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rochelle. You know, when you're answering, that's how we know we're speaking to experts who really understand the field in a diverse way, because they bring in different angles to this question, and you know, from the government side, from the people side, and I think that's a very beautiful answer you gave to the question. Now I'd like to move to the next question. Of course, I'll be bringing up the panelists again to answer the questions, but this next one is from Maurice. Kevin, I see you had another question, but we'll come to you later on once we've gone through the rest. Maurice Judica, what's your question? If you could, yes, thank you.
I'm Maurice Judica. Hope you can see me.
We can't see you, but we can hear you. Now we can see you. All right, great.
I am Maurice Judica. I have been involved in tobacco control for a year now with Den of Hope, and I have interacted with my friends, telling them the effects of tobacco and smoking in general. So my question was, how or what were the steps that I can do to make sure or to be able to win a prize on No Tobacco Day, like our panelists, or like the steps to make sure I reach at that level?
Thank you very much. That's an interesting question. That's a beautiful question as well. I know Mr. Joel on the call is the one who has actually got to win this award. So Mr. Joel, if you could give brief highlights, and then maybe also Samuel, because I know Samuel has a lot of experience in the tobacco space and must have known how these awards are being won. So I'll give Mr. Joel a chance to just give us a quick highlight, really. And I think if you analyze the question, it goes further to say, what are the skills do I need to, and what is the effort do I need to put in as a tobacco advocate to ensure I get the local and global recognitions to receive awards such as the World No Tobacco Day Prize, and awards like that. So I'll give Joel the first 2 minutes to answer this, and then I'll amplify the question further to Samuel, because I know you must know how these things are gotten. But first, Joel, what did you do?
Thank you so much. What I should say is that if you do whatever we are doing with the reward in mind, that whether you want to be awarded, so you put in your best, but then thinking about an award, you'll be frustrated at one point and you might not do much. Just do what you are doing because of passion, because of calling, and aim at just being your best at whatever you do. I've never thought of an award, much as I could hear people are getting awards. I never thought of anything like that. In fact, it was Sam who came up with this, who proposed that now you can also be one of those that can get an award because of the work that we have seen you do. So if you ask Rachel, she will tell you she has won awards without really working with awards in mind. So I asked my son to just work, just do your best. The best award is whatever you get out of it, the satisfaction that you have, that kind of internal kind of motivation, that you just do it. There are so many who have done it. Some has done it until he's where he is. He might not have been awarded at any one time. Maybe people like Caleb, Leons are doing it. They have done it. They have not got, or some have got. So let's just do what we can do. If an award is to come, it will. If it doesn't come, then we don't even have to be frustrated, to despair. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Joel. Raquel, you've won this award as well. So I'll bring you on board also to just share, how do you get there? What do we need to do as young people to, get to that stage? And then I'll still bring also Sam to give us some nuggets. So Ms. Raquel, take it away.
So the World No Tobacco Day Award is awarded by WHO to people from different regions, and somebody has to nominate you. And so what they are looking at is one, what work you have done at a country level. So your work of essence must be either at the national level or the subnational level. And the people have to nominate you, preferably from your organization, but also to get support letters. So for example, my World No Tobacco Day Award was in recognition of my work in Kenya. So from 2004 up to 2010, I was lobbying for tobacco control legislation in Kenya. And then from 2007 to about 2010, I was one of the founder members of KETCA. So there was references to alliance building and partnerships. And then after that, I moved to the continental level. So I've worked at ATCA. So I was the founding chair of ATCA. So again, alliance building at the regional level. And then finally, my work with training and capacity building of civil society and government. So if you're interested in, as a young person, building a career, so I do agree with Gitali that we don't do these things with a view to getting an award, but you need to be able to document what you're doing, and there needs to be evidence of the work you've done. So the first thing I would say as a young person is build partnerships and get known for working with others. So currently you're affiliated with Den of Hope. Engage a bit more with the other tobacco control organizations in the room. So KETCA, ILA, CIN, so be active in the activities. Hopefully, if you can also have some written or published work. So we do a very poor job in Africa of documenting. And so, for example, I would challenge you, what can you do with the Den of Hope websites? Because that is one of the things that people would be checking. So when they Google your name, what comes up? Have you documented what you are doing? And then slowly as you rise up into leadership, so you need to show some leadership experience. So typically people who get a World No Tobacco Day award have been in the field for probably 10 years or more, because then there's some track record that they can show for it.
All right, thank you very much. I think that was a more detailed answer as well, that really goes into the point of some of the things that you could do. Things that I've picked up include documenting your journey, doing a lot of the work in place, doing research, and also publishing some work on the front, and constantly doing that over the long term with the aim of helping people, and eventually the award just finds you along the way. Now, I'll also bring in Mr. Samuel. Yeah, Samuel, what do you think we should be doing? And what have you seen others do?
I think basically my colleague panelists have already said a lot of this, and I think it's the biggest big award is to be able to make a positive change in people's lives. And I think that is should be the greatest satisfaction that one would ever imagine, that you've been able to make a change, to make a contribution. And therefore, I would just say that the thing is, especially in this field, being consistent, being brave, and having real change that can be seen. And then it will get you a long way. And of course, doing it within an open space where others, I think Rachel has really explained that in the right way. So if you follow up the work that Joel has done, of course, you realize that he really deserved it. You know, if you just see what he's done in Kenya, he's all over in the social media. He's, you know, literally speaking out and, you know, saying this is not right, and over time. So I've just emphasized those key things. I'm not saying that getting an award is bad. It's actually very good. It's desirable. It encourages us. It also encourages other people. But don't look at it as the final goal. No, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel. That was very insightful. And now we have a question for Elvina. Elvina, and the question here is, what support do young people need to effectively support tobacco control action? So that is your question. And if you could give us some insights on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, for that question. So the support that young people need would be definitely educational materials that tell us more about the harms that tobacco causes, being around mentors and having opportunities to attend training forums. So because in training forums, we'll be able to network and also to just keep tabs with the people who've been in the industry for a long time. The other thing that we would need in this tobacco control efforts would be resources, definitely. This is one of the things that young people need. So resources in terms of, yes, we've talked about the educational material, but also finances, because young people are enthusiastic and we want to use our skills, our talents to talk about the harms that tobacco causes. So there's a bit of a gap in that, because sometimes it can be very hard to finance yourself, maybe to go and talk to other fellow young people in high schools about that. So those are just a few of the things that young people would need. Back to you, Stephen.
Steve, if I could add something. What I found was helpful when we were starting in 2004, and this goes to Elvina's point about hand-holding and mentoring. And so if you're not registered as an official entity, it's a bit hard to access funding. And even if you registered an organization now, you likely do not have the kind of name that can attract funding. And so I would suggest one of the things that ATCA and KETCA could consider could be setting up a mentorship program. So I can already volunteer to mentor, and so pair younger advocates with older ones, both at an individual level. So I've already volunteered. If you want to attach somebody to me, we'll avail the time for that. But then also in terms of pairing younger organizations with older ones. And so when KETCA was starting, we were not able to receive money on our own. And so our first grant of $10,000, we received through another organization. And so if you're a young person and you apply in your own name, you likely cannot attract funding. And so my suggestion would be, what if, for example, your funding came through KETCA, which already has a name, so that even as you're implementing the project, people are confident that if the money is given, it's going to be managed properly, because donors are worried about how you'll account for the money. And likely if you're an individual, you do not have that kind of infrastructure. But then also if you shadowed, and so maybe some of the components of this mentorship could be not just attaching the young advocate to the older, but also the older tobacco control organizations. So KETCA, ILA, CIN, having this young person coming in maybe for 1 day a week to shadow and just sit with the older tobacco control advocate. So if you are attached to ILA, once a week you come in and you sit and watch what CELIN does, because I learned by doing. So there's no school that has got a course called tobacco control. Of course, now there's health law and other things. So most of us learned by doing. And so providing those opportunities for direct learning by observation. And then lastly, my appeal to those that go to the Conference of the Parties, give some of those slots to young people. I learned most of what I know by attending the COP. And so again, for young people, please join the Framework Convention Alliance. That's where most of our opportunities to attend the COP came through. And then as Elvina said, be active about looking for opportunities to learn. So there are very many training courses out there, and be active. So find some of us older people and talk to us Nyuma tent about what we did and what opportunities we can avail for you.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for that. And I'll be one of the people who will reach out to you, actually. You've committed that you're willing to mentor us, work with us, you know, so that we learn by actually doing. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. This is the beauty of this call. Opportunities just keep coming. And I'm sure for all of us on the call, we could rally the organizations behind this meeting to ensure that they pick up this actively, so that the conversation does not end in this meeting, but rather that we continue forward. But even as we move, there is another question here, and I'd like to point this question first to David. David Odhiambo, I'd like to point this question to you because you are an experienced tobacco advocate. And so the question here, and then I'll bring up another question to Sam as well. But first, David, what are the new strategies on tobacco control? What new strategies do tobacco control have to be able to effectively counter and respond to tobacco industry interference? And talking from experience as someone who's been working in this field for some time. David, thank you.
Okay, I think that in order for us to counter, to do effective, we need to do a lot of effective tobacco monitoring, in terms of we have to be very vigilant, both within the social media spheres, within the mass media, print media, in order to monitor tobacco industry interference. Because nowadays you'll find that the industry, they are becoming more and more smart, and they are using the social media platforms, and even they are also infiltrating the learning institutions. So as advocates, I think that we need to have both our eyes and ears on the ground so as to counter tobacco industry. And I still believe that as a tobacco control advocate, we need to make a lot of positive noise whenever we see that there's a violation or there's a tobacco industry interference. So we need to do a lot of press release. We need to do a lot of also petitions to the key decision makers so as to counter the tobacco industry interference. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. David, for that answer. I think that was well answered. Now, the next question was a question to Raquel, but I want to point it to Samuel first, actually. Samuel, I want to point this question to you first. And so the question is, how can there be more collaboration between the young and the old when it comes to supporting tobacco control? I know some of it has been mentioned, but how can the older generation practically support the younger tobacco control advocates from your standpoint? And then I'll open it up for other members of the panel to answer.
Yes, thank you so much, Steve, for that. Just before we got to that, I think there's something that is happening currently, that there's a National Drought Response Steering Committee, and we've seen that BAT is a part of that committee. And I think these are some of the areas where we are now seeing the way tobacco industry is mutating and interfering in some of these things. So we need to be very careful in terms of make that and know that and how to make response to that. Back to your question, I think one of the things that this webinar is so much trying to address is the very question that you are asking. I mean, being able to have that intergenerational networking, and I think that's really, really important. The other thing is, of course, have been said, like shadowing, things like pairing, and I think also if we could get into the space of documenting more and more of this, so that people can use them at their own free time. And I think it's important to have an open door policy, both for the young and for the old. I know that in Kenya, we've had that group of Akina Professor Peter Odhiambo, who are also very good. And we have so many, in terms of Kenya, I think we have so many great people whom we should be able to reach to as young people and as old people who are able to help. So if we could do some sort of also a mapping. I think we've already started this with the ILA and KETCA to know where these people are, who are they, and then if we can have that kind of a roster where young people can be able to get to that kind of space. I also think that if we're able to come together and have more of this kind of webinars, have more or less something like an academy, because this is an area where we have to ensure that even as we exit the stage as old people, it has to be sustainable. We have to ensure that we keep people in this space all the time, and they are aware and they are able to take this work forward. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel. That brings us to the last 10 minutes of this conversation. We are at 3:20 Kenyan time, and that brings us to the last. And so I'd like to spend this last 10 minutes giving the panelists an opportunity to give us final word in just 1.5 minutes. In 1.5 minutes, final word. What's your final word? So I'll start with Ms. Rachel Kitonyo. What are your final words, to us as young people and on the work on control, tobacco control in Kenya and even more globally? Final words.
I would say that you need to build your capacity. And so when you look at your advocacy capacity, your capacity to speak, your capacity to write, the kind of knowledge that you have, so that when you speak with authority and you are credible. And so, of course, for a young generation that's on TikTok and Instagram and likes things in sound bites, you need to get a bit more serious. And so, of course, you can try to put tobacco control into a sound bite, but if you're going to engage on complex issues, I think you need to build your knowledge. And then 2 is deliberately reaching out. So you've met a couple of older people here, take the initiative. So If you want our numbers, get them from Steve and reach out. Be the one to do the reaching out. Don't wait for us to be the one to reach you. And then deliberately look for opportunities. And so go online and look for free online courses. There are several so that you can build your personal capacity. And then from me, this would be a plea that we need to engage on tobacco tax advocacy as a movement. And so the industry has been very active lobbying against taxes. Kenya's tobacco taxes are currently among some of the worst in the world. And so the good things that we did between 2015 and 2017, those gains have been eroded. And if we as a movement can take tobacco tax seriously, there is some serious improvement we have to do on Kenya's tobacco taxes.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Raquel. That was nicely done, and within the time as well. So next, I'll give the opportunity to Mr. Joel Gitali. Final words.
Thank you. Now, for young people, as Sam has already said, we are already working with them. I thought Elvina could say this, that we are moving, and especially we've done this with the Den of Hope. Odhiambo can also testify to this, that we work very closely together. We are ever with them outside there, even in the field. And tomorrow, for example, we are having a meeting, and the majority of the people that will be in that meeting are young people from our universities around, including Elvina. So it is something that we are already doing. We are doing mentorship. Maybe we have not called it that name. That's why it's not already featuring. But it is what we are doing practically on the ground. So we are on the move, and we want to continue. These people have the energy, both physical and mental. And therefore, we can teach them the values that they need. We can show them the ways to follow. But when it comes to innovation, creativity, they can do better. And I think when we work together, then we are going to move forward, and they are going to grow into the kind of people that we want. As we exit the stage, they take over with all that they require for that. And I'm sure success will be there. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Joel Gitali. That was incredible. Now I'll move to Mr. Samuel Ochieng. Any closing remarks?
Yes. Thank you, Steve. First of all, I must say that young people are actually the current targets of the tobacco industry. If you look at the products which are coming on board, the so-called emerging and novel products, they're looking at the young people. And young people have the numbers, young people have the creativity. I know that the biggest problem is tobacco industry interference. And if you look at what I was saying, like now having the president getting BAT into this board, and then also having the issue about going all the way to Korea and talking about tobacco and all that, I think we have a huge problem ahead. I know that it's getting more difficult. I must say that it's not insurmountable. We are able to work on it. So what we need to do is that young people should use their creativity, use your space, use your networks. You have the numbers. We are there to support whatever way, whether you need information or you need backing, whatever we've discussed here. I personally have been able to, mentor or bring so many people, hold hands of so many people who are now in this space today, and some of them even international now. So come out, and we are there to support you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Samuel. Another incredible call to action there. Next, we'll move to Elvina Majiwa. Elvina, any final remarks?
Yes, Stephen, thank you very much. So my final remarks would be that I really applaud organizations that involve the youth, such as Kenya Tobacco Control Alliance and also ATCA in such conversations, and those who are also willing to work with us. So I really applaud them. Another thing would be that tobacco control should not be left to a particular kind of people or just the advocates. the more skills, the more people are involved in tobacco control, the stronger our efforts will be and the faster we'll yield results. So each and everyone matters in tobacco control, and our skills are needed in this space. Lastly, I'd like to say that in the case that you have a friend or you particularly use tobacco, don't hesitate to reach out to your healthcare provider to ask for ways, remedies to commit to quit. So there's no stigma around it, and that's what we encourage, just people to commit to quit for those who are addicted. Thank you very much, Stephen.
All right, thank you very much, Elvina. Incredible, straight to the point. And then lastly, now we'll have David, I believe, David Odhiambo. Final remarks?
Thank you. So I'm humbled to be part of this conversation. And what I would like to appeal is that young people need a lot of mentorship and support in order to harness their potential in the fight against tobacco. And then again, out here in the community, in our various engagements, we find that young people are really willing to quit smoking and the use of other tobacco-related products, but there are no rehabilitative services. So it's paramount that we continue to lobby and advocate for rehabilitation services so that young people can be able to get these services at their comfort. Again, as we also engage in the fight against tobacco, we need to be patient, we need also to be resilient, and we also need to be consistent in our efforts, because we've realized over time that this fight is not for the faint-hearted. So it requires a lot of dedication, it requires a lot of commitment. Maybe sometimes the results might not be instant, it might take a long time, but eventually through concerted efforts with the like-minded stakeholders and partners, we shall be able to realize tobacco-free society. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. David Odhiambo. That was also incredible. And now I'd like to ask all of the panelists to just turn on their cameras so that even as I do closing remarks, that we can have a brief photo just to document this. So Mr. Samuel, Mr. Joel, Gitali, yeah, your camera. All right, great. All right, so thank you very much for joining, and thank you very much for being very active participants in this conversation and offering their advice. This has been incredible. We are very much on time, which is, we are very much on time at 3:30 Kenyan time. And again, let us pick up the action points that have been shared throughout this meeting to ensure that the conversation on tobacco and tobacco control continues to move on. And with that, thank you very much. And now, can you smile for me so that whoever is taking this photo takes the photo, and then we'll call it a wrap. All right, so at the back end, ATCA Africa, let us know if the photo has been taken. All right, great. I'm assuming it has been taken. With that, thank you very much, everyone, and have yourselves a lovely day, and let us continue this fight on tobacco control. See you on the next one.
See you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.